Welcome to the House of Hoosier podcast. I'm your host once again, AJ Guyton. And, I'm here with a very special guest, man, one of my former teammates, second all-time leader and assist at Indiana University, man, current UCLA assistant men's basketball coach, Guyton and Michael Lewis. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I apologize for my background, AJ. I got two daughters that are home from school for the holiday break, and they're getting ready. 13 and 10. It's loud in the house, so
right, yeah.
I'm not trying to show off the LA weather or anything, But
man, you just motivated me because I'm sitting here in the basement. It's fucking 32 degrees here in Peoria, and you come out stunting like that. Yeah, that's dope, though.
It's a little chilly. It's about 65, 66 here today, but
oh man,
it's not bad, man. It's got its perks. But
that's scalding hot for us. Before we get started, man, we like to take our journeys back, man, on the House of Hoosier podcast. Get our old school guys introduced to the new school, talk about your journey, man. So let's start in Jasper, Indiana, man. During that time period, what was it like coming up in Jasper? The family dynamics in your household, man, and how did you get introduced to that game of round ball?
I mean, you've been to Jasper. I mean, it's a cool place. It's right in the heart of southwestern Indiana. I think it was about probably 10,000 people when I was growing up. It's a little bit bigger now, but I moved there when I was in second grade. My mom and dad were both teachers. My dad was a coach and then became the athletic director my junior year of high school. So I was around the game just because, my dad was a coach. My grandfather had coached and so after school programs for me, like I would just jump on the bus in elementary and take the bus to the high school.
Right.
I'd get off at the high school and I'd go to practice and, whether I just hanging around, watching, or I get on a side bucket and shoot, or as I got older, there was a court upstairs of our gym there at Jasper, and I'd go up there and shoot around, and then the wrestling team or the football guys that were lifting in the off season, they would come up there and like kind of play some pickup games. And I was fortunate enough that they let me play with them, and I'm just a little third, fourth, fifth grader, and they let me play with them. So, playing against the older guys, bigger and stronger, and I was just always around the game. And so I was able to pick it up at an early age because of my dad being a coach and having access to the gym. But that was what I was used to. I didn't go home and play with the neighborhood kids or anything like that. I got on the bus and went to the high school and went to basketball practice. And like I said, whether I was shooting on the side or, just dribbling around, or I, go as I got older, I would go up and kind of do Steve Alford made that little workout video, on VHS tape.
Right, yeah.
So, I had that memorized, and I just go shoot around on my own, and what practice was going on, and I peek over the edge and watch a little bit. Then I go shoot around and try to get some guys to play. And so that was kind of my childhood of growing up and how I was introduced to the game, and it just kind of took off from there.
Okay, so to describe which characteristics that helped you throughout the game of basketball as a player and as a coach that you took away from your parent, each parent. So what your competitiveness comes from your dad, or your sharing comes from your mom. Like what parts of each parent did you take with you into the game of basketball?
Yeah. Well, my mom. So my grandfather, like I said, my mom's dad was a coach. So obviously, the competitive household. My dad, played and coached. So obviously there's some competitiveness on both sides. I think the thing that helped me the most, especially as I got into college, where the talent level and athleticism kind of balance out, and I wasn't the most talented, most athletic guy on the floor, was just my toughness and my competitiveness. That's, if there's anything that I said that I think stood out in my career that helped me the most, I think it would be, those two things, is just the toughness and the competitiveness. And it's funny how different things come up after you play and you're into coaching. And I feel like I'm very secure with who I am, which I think helps me in coaching. I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm very confident and secure in who I am as a person and what I can bring to the table. But I'm also very secure in who I was as a player. I'm not one of these guys that I'm 44 years old and I'm still reliving my high school days, I mean,
Right. No
it'd
doubt.
be great to be sitting around talking about hanging 30 on somebody, but like, it's not where I'm at in my life. Those were great highlights, but I'm still hoping my highlights really are upcoming yet,
Yeah, definitely.
later on in life. But, I talk to guys all the time, like, hey man, like, you hear kids talking on the floor, or you read things in the newspaper, or somebody's like, oh, this kid can't do that, it can't do this, or you gotta, guys getting ready to try to go to the next level, oh, you got to show you can shoot. No, make them fall in love with the player that you are.
Right.
I see too many times, you and I think talked about it when you were coaching recruiting, like the guy's trying to do things he can't do because somebody's told him, if you want to play college or you want to play NBA, you've got to be able to shoot the three. Well,
Right.
he's just showing what he can't do, and now he's looking bad.
Yeah.
Just do the things that you can do. Make us fall in love with you, and then we'll make excuses for the things you can't do. But
Right.
I always felt I was very secure in who I was as a player. I understood my limitations, and I knew the things that I could bring to the table to help a team win. And I think it all translates back to competitiveness and toughness.
Right.
And so I tell our guys a lot, like, let them tell you can't go left. Let them tell you can't shoot. Who cares? That's just somebody's opinion. Don't ever let somebody call you soft. Like, that would be like, that's like the worst insult like anybody could ever label me, right? Or if I was a player today, like somebody could, like, that would be the biggest insult to me as a player. If somebody told me that I was soft, or that would never set well for me. And it's always stuck with me.
No doubt, guys. Still reliving high school, man. I always say not very much happened to you after high school. If that's the only memories you have. So you really got to focus on with your future and what you can do to make that great. So you go into high school, and you're high school, man. You start getting a little bit stronger. You start getting a little better at the game, man. Who or what was instrumental in your development as you began to, hone your skills in high school?
Well, my freshman year, I got to play with a guy named Scott Rowland, and for the people that follow baseball, they're going to know Scott Rowland. I think he's actually on the baseball staff at IU now, helping out a little bit. But he was he's hopefully a Hall of Famer here in the next couple of years. He's creeping up his percentages on the ballot, but probably the best athlete that I've ever played with or played against. And I played against a lot of NBA guys. So he was just at a different level. So he was a senior when I was a freshman, and he was the guy that, I was 5'8", 135 pounds when I was a freshman in high school. So, I wasn't intimidating by any means from a physical standpoint, but, he was, and he was very good. He was an Indiana All-Star, and actually signed a basketball scholarship to play at the University of Georgia. Before he became, I think he was a second round draft pick. And I think he made the right choice, being a major all-star, all that. But so he helped me a lot my freshman year by, just being a leader and a kind of a guiding force, and the acceptance from the older guys, on the team of having a freshman come in there and play and contribute. But really, when I moved, it's a strange story, AJ. When I moved to Jasper, and I never met this guy until I was a senior in high school. But there was a guy by the name of Mike Ballinger, who went on to Kentucky, and then I think transferred to Western Kentucky. But when I was a second grader and moved to Jasper, I learned very quickly that if you were going to be anybody as an athlete in that community, you had to do what Mike Ballinger did, or close to it, or exceed it. And so really, from second grade all the way through high school, there was this ghost of this Mike Ballinger character that I was competing against. I was trying, like, I bet Mike Ballinger didn't do this when he was in grade. Just the little games that you play with yourself. But and then I met him my senior year of high school, and we've kind of kept in touch off and on. And I've actually had this conversation with him. He was kind of the guy that I was challenging myself and working every day to try to be like, hey, I don't know who this dude is, but I'm going to go be better than him.
Right.
And so now as you get older, like, you kind of look back on what you were able to accomplish. And I hope that I'm that for somebody back in Jasper,
No doubt.
But it was cool. But that was kind of the, I'd say those two guys from my community were the two guys that one I'd never met, but I looked up to and I wanted to be better than. And then the other one, was much closer in age and a guy that I got to compete with. So
Right.
it's pretty cool.
Well, whoever it was did a good job, because you ended up leading state in scoring and you finished second in Mr. Basketball. And one story that never comes out about you is your recruiting process. Once you got to that level, man, what was your recruiting process like? Were you considering other places, or was the automatic Indiana slam dunk?
It was a pretty simple process. The whole setup was so much different back then than it is now.
Right.
Like I don't think you could accept a phone call until like July 1st going into your senior year or something.
Right.
I had already committed, so I didn't even have to deal with any of that stuff. But I mean, you got a ton of letters and all that stuff, and some guys. That was another thing I was fortunate, having Scott Rowland on the team as a senior. He was generating some basketball interest during it, and so he had, like Georgia and Kentucky and Syracuse and Purdue and different teams like that would come and watch him, and then you're just a scrawny little freshman out there playing, but your name gets on a list or something. And I played. I traveled to Indianapolis to play AAU from 13. Time I was 13 on. And got to play with like Brad Stevens, Jack Owens, Courtney James. I played a year up because my birthday was in July, and the AAU had a birthday cutoff, so I always had to play a year up, which I think in the long run benefited me. Playing against the older guys. So, but my recruiting process, I think I went up. I think Coach Dockage had called down and invited me up to the senior day game of my sophomore year of high school. So, you're an hour and a half away from Bloomington and Jasper. So, obviously being a sophomore, I'm excited. I go up there, watch the game my junior year, went up to another game, kind of got an open invite to kind of come whenever I wanted from that point on. And then in about February of my junior year, I'll remember they were playing Minnesota, and I was just going to go up, and like I said, it's just an hour and a half away, and it's a pretty easy trip. I'd taken a buddy up before, and I think I was just going to try to go to the game and just take one of my friends up with me. And Coach Dockage was like, "No, why don't you bring your parents? I think Coach Knight would like to speak with your parents after the game." Didn't think anything of it, and we roll up there, and they got beat. Vashawn Leonard lost one off the backboard to himself and dunks it at the end of the game. And that stuff didn't happen. I mean, they had a winning streak, and so we're going to just get out of there. Like, I'm not hanging around after a loss.
Right.
And Coach Dockage came out, no, why don't you guys hang around? Coach wants to speak to you, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I got school the next day. Like, this is probably like a Tuesday or Wednesday. We got a game on Friday. You're trying to get rested and all that. But we sat around in that little players lounge, or what they call the players lounge. You remember that little room?
Yeah.
And we sat in there forever, man. Just and finally the door comes open and Coach walks in, and his hair's all messed up, and he's got his sweater's off, and one collar on his little shirt's fly. I mean, just looked awful, right? I mean, we've all seen it because we've all been a part of those losses, right?
Right. Yep.
So he sits down and he's like, well, introduces, says hi to everybody. And then he's like, Mike, he's like, I feel like going hunting tomorrow. I feel like I need to shoot something. Tell me a place down around Jasper to shoot birds. I'm 16 years old, man. I don't know. So, I mean, and you're nervous as hell because it's Coach Knight, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, Coach, I can't really answer that question. I don't hunt. I got some buddies that do. I could probably figure out a spot, but it's I'm not. It'd be hard for me to say, honestly. And he kind of shakes his head. He's got his hands in his pocket, and he's just like, "Well, you want to play ball here?" I was like, "Yep."
Yeah.
He puts that big old paw on my shoulder. He's like, "Well, all right, my boy." He says, "Denny, Kathy," shakes my mom and dad's hand, turn around, walks out. And then he stopped at the door and he said, "Now, hey, what do you got? About a month left of your season. You got your, the sectionals, regionals, tournaments coming up, all that stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, this is done. You're going to be with us." But he goes, "Your life's going to change when this becomes public, here. So why don't you just enjoy the rest of your season? Hambo will get a hold of you when your season's over, and you can do the little announcement."
Wow.
And so that was so we just walked out. That was it. And we walked all the way to the car, and we're out in lot double Z or whatever it is, and it's freezing. We get in there, and my dad starts the car, And before he put it, he's like, "What just happened?"
Right. Yeah.
I was like, "I think I'm going to Indiana."
You're going to Indiana.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was it, man. So it was not some big glorious recruitment. I kind of knew where I wanted to go if it got to that point.
Right.
Just growing up where I grew up, there weren't a lot of. It was, if there was anything, I was probably deciding between Indiana and Purdue. But
Right.
at that time, when Coach Knight asked if you wanted to play for him, like there was only one answer.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with BetRivers yet, now's the time, because they're offering a $250 match bonus for our first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one play to turn your money into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With football season kicking off, get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You get to Indiana the summer of 1996, man. I know that because I was with you. You got there. And what was your kind of immediate assessment of playing or working and being an Indiana Hoosier? Was it harder than you expected? Was it what you expected? Or was it a little lighter than what you expected?
Man, we couldn't do the summer workouts.
Right.
We couldn't do that. So, but Coach had got us. I don't know, because you came a little later.
I was a little later, but I remember.
Yeah, he got like me and Jason Collier jobs at like the Bloomington Tire Company.
Bloomington Tire.
We're flipping tires from 8 to 12 for like $5 an hour.
Yeah.
Come on, man. And then we were allowed to lift weights, and then we would play open gym, and that was all we could do at that time. I just remember, like, I think I played open gym for a whole week and didn't score. Like, so my reaction was like, oh shit, like this is different. Like, you're not going to be able to just do what you did in high school. And so I think it was probably, obviously it was harder but I'm not sure I really had any preconceived notion of how it was going to be.
Right.
I didn't know, but I think I got in there and, like, these dudes are good. You knew who the returning guys were, but even like some of the guys that were, coming off the bench that maybe your friends would make fun of on the roster.
Right.
Like, this dude can hoop too now. Like,
right.
So it was harder, but it was, man, I miss those days. I mean, I remember I'm just sitting here and you saying that, and I remember that apartment we were in that summer.
Yeah, everything.
I remember the first time I made macaroni and cheese. I forgot to drain the water, man, but I was so hungry I ate it anyway.
You ate it.
So, but no, it's just it was really good, man. But it was eye-opening, I think, for me, at how difficult it was going to be, and how I was going to have to change as a player to be able to make an impact on winning. And I think we did like a little summer tour. Didn't we do, like, go play some games?
I think we went to Ball State.
And we did some things, and you could tell, like, I remember in those when we got back to Bloomington, those pickup games, like, you kind of just picked up where you left off from some of those all-star games, making shots and doing all the thing. And I was having a much more difficult time kind of figuring out how I was going to be successful. And so it was a lot harder, but I think now, like, I relate things back to coaching, and I think, like, how kids would react if they were hit with what I was hit with early in my career. So, like, it was, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but it was either our first or second practice. And now we did the 4-man fall workouts. Remember those? Yep. And, but it was like the first or second, I think it was maybe the practice after, like, the Midnight Madness deal that we had. Yep. And coach calls me over before practice, and he's like, puts his arm around me. He's like, you want to play a lot or you want to play a little? And you're a freshman. Like, I'm just like, like, Coach Knight actually, knows who I am, got his arm around me, like, I'm like, yeah, I want to play a lot. And he's like, well, quit shooting the fucking ball. Wow. I don't know if you can cuss on this thing. If you got,
you can. Yeah.
But he's like, quit shooting the effing ball. And I'm like, I think back now, like if you told a kid that, like, I just scored 32 a game, man. Like that's kind of like what I do. That's what I do, man. You're taking my game. You're taking,
right. Yeah.
But he was like, hey, he's like, Patterson, I can really score. He goes, Reed can score. He goes, I think Guyton's going to be able to score. And he goes, if you can be a leader and you can lead this team and get us in the offense and get guys the ball when they're open, where they can be successful with it. And if you can be the toughest dude on the court, you'll play as much as you want for the next 4 years. He goes, now, if you want to try to be a scorer, then you can sit next to me. And I was just like, so like my mindset can, like, then I just started to, try to distribute and be tough and be a leader and all those things. But he kind of laid out how I was going to be a contributing factor to Indiana if I wanted, very early on in my career. And he wasn't wrong. Like, I mean, if I would have tried to do what you and some of those other guys did offensively, like, I couldn't do those things, but I could do the things that he was asking of me.
Mm-hmm. I would say this, man. I mean, we as former coach and as an elder statesman now, I look back at it, and that is true. I mean, you definitely made a bigger impact as a leader, but with all the defections and transfers, it's almost like I'm looking back at it now. I'm like, damn, I wish Mike would have averaged 17 a game, would have averaged 15 a game. Like, I think you had that ability. You obviously you proved it in high school and in the state.
Yeah, I think older on, like as our maybe our junior and our our senior, I think I averaged like 10 or 11. But,
yeah, you did.
I think I could have been maybe a little bit more aggressive offensively that year, and it maybe it would have helped us. But you were scoring it at such a high clip, and Kirk was scoring it at a high clip. That we were fine, and we were winning games. Like, I didn't, and I kind of knew. I felt like I'd picked up my scoring a little bit, with some of the defections, but I knew what my job was, and I was just trying to do that. But I don't really have, like, people like, oh man, don't you win? Like, no, like, that's where it goes back to being very secure with who I was as a player. Like, I don't get my feelings hurt, or like, I don't think I was something that I wasn't. I feel like my college career, coming from high school, and then leaving college, like, I led the state in scoring, and then I left Indiana as the assist leader. Like, like the growth that I had as a player, I take a lot of pride in, because, that, like, you see guys today, they're not willing to do that. And I couldn't come off screens and score like you could. I couldn't, do that little crossover that, like, I just quit guarding you in practice. I was tired of getting crossed over all the time. So I just quit guarding. Let somebody else. Like, you go ahead. Like, if the freshman come in, yeah, go ahead. You got him. Go ahead.
You got him, Dang.
Yeah, good luck with that, But I did know how I could help our team win. And so I just tried to do that as well as I could possibly do it. And I think, Coach and I had we developed a really good relationship, especially as our career got older, or as my career went on, and I had a very good understanding of what his expectations were for me. And, like, if I could, if he wanted to go off one day and I was a recipient, if it kept him from going off on somebody else that maybe didn't handle those things quite as well, then that was part of it, but it was those times, man, they were so much fun. I was thinking the other day, we were talking, and I remember a time in practice, and how we would chart those post feeds.
Yep.
And we would chart those post feeds, and I never, my job was to assist guys, right? So I'm always, and he was on me one day about not feeding the post, and I'm like, this dude is like, what are you talking about? Like, I throw to the post more than anybody. Like, what are you talking about? If guy's not coming off a screen, like, I'm hastening in the post. But he lit me up one day for not feeding the post. And I won't say who was in the post, because it's not, it doesn't matter. And, I'm like, come on, man. Like, that is just, I was, it's like, I'm a senior. Like, it's just one of those days, like, I kind of had enough of that, And so he pulls me out, flips my jersey white, one of those things. And so I'm standing there over there, and I'm like, he's still talking to me, but a much calmer voice. I'm like, Coach, so I got a question. He's like, yeah. I go, I could throw it in there. I said, what the fuck's he gonna do with it?
Right. Yeah.
And he pauses. He looks at me. He kind of, gives you one of those, right?
Uh-huh.
And walks away. So I get back in. So possession comes up. I throw it to him.
Throw it away.
He like shoots something like off the backboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I'm walking back to half court, when we were in the drill, you check it back up. I just
Yep.
kind of looked at him, and he kind of looked at me with that big wry smile on his face,
Right.
that was it. But that was where kind of our relationship was, towards the end of our career. Like, I think there was he trusted me, and obviously I had a lot of trust and belief in him. And then,
Right.
going to work for him was special. And I probably feel like a lot of guys do that had the chance to play for him. I think he provided us with a foundation to be successful. Now what you do with that, is on each one of us, but the foundation that he provided us in how to carry ourselves and how to act and how to perform and all those things, he set us up for success.
Yeah, thinking back, man, as we continue to take a trip down memory lane, man, I played with Mike from 96 to 2000. And one thing, as we reflect when we get older, man, the one thing that I realize is, how much I don't want to call it trauma, but how much we went through with everything that happened. Because you look at our freshman year, Neil Reed thing happens. Our sophomore year, Jason leaves. Our junior year, Luke leaves. Then our senior year, it's almost like it all came back full circle when the thing resurfaces. And right when we're at our peak and right when we're heading into the NCAA tournament, this happens again. Like, I was like, man, it's amazing that we kind of went through that without a scratch. Like, we really did. But it's a picture. There's a picture in the paper of me and you sitting next to each other. I'm gonna share it with you, man. And we looked when we was losing the Pepperdine in the final game. We just looked like we were in another place, man. And I just was after we think back, it's like, do you feel, and I know you don't reflect very much, but do you remember that time period and how much we had to overcome? Because we always felt like Coach Knight could coach us through anything. Right. So that's why we never really worried about who left and who wasn't there. But when you look back, it's like, damn, that was 14 points and 8 rebounds gone. Then the next year it was 14 points, 8 rebounds. Then the next year it was 20 points gone. But we still managed to, which I thought to me was one of Coach Knight's best coaching jobs, was our senior year. Like, we didn't have a bunch of big name recruits. We were all in the program 4 years, and we were giving people hell in the Big Ten. Like, it was just not an easy game against Indiana University, man. You think about that time, man. Did that stuff weigh on you? Because you were more closer to those situations than I was.
I think, I think you, like what you said, you look back on it later on in life. I think when you're going through it, you're just trying to figure out what the next step is and how you can, make the best of each situation. Like there's a lot of those things that you have no control over.
Right.
So you can spend time, and you see it all the time. People worry about things they can't control, and ends up taking away from them, ultimately being successful. And so, I think I've always been able to, and I think you have to as a coach, move on to what's next and turn your focus onto the people around you and the people that are there that can, help you be successful. And so, I think while we were in it, like, I didn't, you move on to the next, even though it was a roommate or a close friend, or, you try to figure out, like, well, I'm here at Indiana. Like, if they don't want to be here, don't be here. Like, I'm here. Like, this is the place to be. If I'm here, this is the place to be, right? And so let's go make it happen. Like, I'm not like, just because some media guy says we're not going to win our senior year because these guys left. Like, no, we'll go win.
Right. Yeah.
We'll go win. And I remember we had lost. We tricked off that game to Indiana State at home.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And but we're getting ready to go. I forget where we're going.
North Carolina.
And coach was like, like, if you guys don't screw that game up at Indiana State, like, you're probably 4th in the country right now, and you're going out to play, North Carolina, right before Christmas, and this can really, you got a chance to head into the Big Ten, the top 5 program in the country, and that's a hell of an accomplishment for a team that I think we were like the first Indiana team not to be in the preseason top 25 in X amount of years, right? And but we found a way to make it work, and coach, like what you said, you felt like going into a game and that if coach said do X, Y, Z,
Mhm.
if we did X, Y, Z, we're going to have a shot to win the game.
Right.
And we had that ultimate confidence in him putting us in the best situations to be successful. And when more times than not, when we went out and did X, Y, Z, we won the game.
Yeah, definitely. But with those guys transferred, one thing I failed at, I always I told you, I told Luke, I told Kirk, I've had on this show is like looking back, obviously, and I try to instill this stuff into my daughter coming up as a young player. It's like I missed the boat on the friendship part of it. I missed the boat on, becoming a team of brothers. I mean, like we didn't hate each other, we dislike each other, nothing like that. But I should have been over Mike Lewis' house hanging out. You know what I mean? I should have been doing those things. That's where but when you're in it, you're just focused on winning the next game. You're not really focused on, especially with all those defections and all that. And that's the area that I failed in leadership wise that I think is important. And we'll get touch on this later as you went to the Final Four with UCLA. When I asked you, like, what is the DNA of a Final Four basketball team? And I bet you will tell me that the camaraderie between those guys was one of the main things because they were friends. They really cared about each other. So did you try to convince those guys to stay at that time? Or did you try to because I know I didn't, because I didn't really know what was going on. But did you try that from a leadership standpoint to keep it together before you let it go?
They, in both Jason and, Luke's situation, like the decision, by the time it got to me, like the decision had been made. Like they didn't really lead on to anything going into it. Obviously, I would have tried to get them to stay, but and I do, like, looking back, like just being, I think about that too. Like I didn't live in the dorms. Like I know you and Jimenez lived in the dorm. But Collier and I talk about the power of Coach Knight at that time. So, I had committed, like I said, when I was a junior, and we went to that Nike camp. I think you were at the Nike camp as well.
Okay.
In Indianapolis.
Oh yeah, I sure was.
Yeah, heading into our senior year. And somehow, just miraculously, Jason Collier and I were roommates that week. So
how that happened?
I mean, hey, just like luck of the draw, right? Luck of the draw. I've already committed. He's their number one recruiter at the time. Like, just put them together.
Mm-hmm.
But we were obviously roommates, and so we were tighter. But it didn't. The thing that we never stayed in the dorms, and part of me is like, we probably should have stayed in the dorms. But we got an apartment, and Andy Murphy, who was a manager, Murph.
Yeah, I know Murph.
And my best friend in high school lived with us for a semester at a time because he had got drafted by the Brewers, and so the spring semester he would not go to school. He'd go to spring training and whatnot. But I do think about that sometimes from the standpoint of me being so close to Jasper.
Yeah.
And basically my whole high school went to Indiana. Right. I had built-in friends away from basketball, which I appreciated at the time because it was kind of a way to get away from basketball. I could go hang out with them and just be one of the guys and kind of get away from the whole IU basketball thing. But looking back, I do wish, maybe I'd have stayed in the dorms and maybe met some more people, just campus people. And then, maybe we all get an apartment or house together. Like my senior year, it was me and Coverdale and Odell, lived together. I always lived with at least another one or two different players. But we could have got together and got something, because I do think that stuff matters. And,
it does.
You can be around each other too much. I understand that as well. But I think one thing that helped us last year, with our team that went to the Final Four was, obviously we had COVID, and we had it was different out here than let's say in the Midwest as far as the restrictions. And our guys were around each other all the time. If they wanted to hang out, like they had to be around each other or other athletes on campus that had the same protocols that they had. And obviously they followed those, I'm not going to say to a T, but they did a pretty good job, because we went from September 21st all the way through the end of the Final Four with 0 positive tests. And I'm sitting here today on December 20th, and we're shut down because of COVID. Right. So obviously we were lucky last year, but our guys, I think, were pretty responsible from that standpoint. And then the whole NCAA tournament was different. You were in that bubble, and we were on one hotel room floor for 3 consecutive weeks, man. And if those dudes didn't hang out with each other, they had no other choice.
Right. Yeah.
So there was some of that. And I think that's going to be a cool experience. But you know, looking back, I think that was the one thing. Like, I wish I probably would have stayed in the dorms, you know, and maybe met a few other people. But I did, during the time, I did enjoy being pretty insulated from a lot of the IU basketball stuff, because I had an escape with some childhood friends.
Yeah, definitely, man. And the only reason why you look back,
you guys came over quite. I mean, we would hang out, you know.
Yeah. No, it wasn't like we
probably not as much. Not as much as you know, we should have. You know, we probably should have been more like, nah, man, you're not doing that tonight. You're coming.
Right. You go kicking it with the fellas.
Yeah,
and I kind of learned that from listening to Isaiah talk, listening to Quinn talk, listening to, because you're still learning, you're still growing, man. And the number one thing they all would say is how close they were, how they would do this together, they do that together, and they was together all the time. And that's the only thing I would, if I change anything, that's the only thing I would change about my experience in Indiana. I wouldn't not winning the Big Ten, I would do it all over again. But the one thing I would do is I would bring the guys together, especially after all of that, the turmoil, you know, especially when a guy leaves. We should have all just been, all right, man, it's us against the world, like da-da-da-da. But we believed in the power of Coach Knight, and we kept moving. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it was. So that's the only reason why. And you want to help other young kids coming, you know, like your UCLA team is like, hey, man, y'all want to win, y'all got to be a family. Not just say it, but you really got to be a family. And that means y'all holding each other accountable on and off the court. And so that's that part.
You got to have some real conversations, and you can't.
Yes.
And you can't worry about hurting your buddy's feelings. Like, you
right.
gotta, like, you know, and I think sometimes when you go through some of that, you can grow from it, but you have to be willing to do that. It's much easier said than done when you get in those situations for guys to, you know, to open up and say what's really on their mind, you know, and to throw it all out there. But I do think there's some real benefit from it, no question.
No doubt. Hey, you talk about your relationship with Coach Knight and how it was respect. I honestly believe that the day that all changed was our sophomore year. I don't know. We was playing Michigan.
You got to go there, don't you?
Yeah. To me, that's when the whole thing shifted. It was like, all right, he's the guy, because you actually had a point, and you was actually willing to die for that point at that minute, man. You remember that time? I went
crazy for a minute.
Now you blacked out, but you remember the play I'm talking about?
No, trust me, I remember the play, man. You know, like you think about things and you know, how you're remembered, right, in the eyes of fans. And,
right.
You know, like, it's so funny. Like, you get out, and I'm sure you've aged a little bit better than I've aged, right? You know, so, but you get out and you meet somebody, and they're like, oh man, you know, boy, you've really changed. Like, man, I played 20 some years ago. Like, I like 20 years ago, right?
Exactly.
Like, you know, like, but they got you in this little, they got you in this little box of 18 to 22 years old. Like, listen, I wish I still looked like I did when I was.
Who you telling? Wait till I show you this picture.
Yeah. So, but they, you know, it is funny. And so, of course, I remember that play, but, you know, you go through all those things and all those games in 4 years. And you know, if you ask somebody about me, like, two things come up: the play that you're talking about against Michigan, and then the play where, you know, you threw it off that dude's face. Yeah. But, you know, it's like, those are two things that stand out. Like, 4 years, man, I gave you everything I have.
All I could give you.
That's what you remember, you know. But no, I remember that play, man, and I remember going through walkthrough, and you know, they were running a little America's play. It's just a cross screen, down screen. They ran it all the time, and you know, I just did the basic, you know, like, little bump on the cut, and you know, coach got all over me, walked through, like, you know, this dude's 280 pounds and blah blah, you know, and you're gonna have to, like, hit and then just sprint like hell. You know, I did what he told me to do, and somebody got beat on the wing. I forget who it was, and they laid it up, and I got my back turned, which was an absolute no in our defense.
You're right.
And so, you know, it was just a bad timing, and you know, it went on from there. And the funny thing is, people made a big deal about it, but Coach and I never really talked about it from there. Like
Uh-oh.
he took me out and he set me down and he was showing me on the board. He's acting like he was drawing stuff, but he was really just talking to me. And then he threw me right back in the game. We won the game, but I feel the same way that you did. I think there was a different level of a different connection between the two of us.
Right.
That, I felt like from that point on, he would call me into the dungeon a little bit more and watch film. He would check with me a little bit more about the pulse of the team on different situations. Much more after that point than, let's say, before. And so, if that was the outcome of that incident, I'd do it again. I've now that I coach, like that stuff doesn't bother me. As long as it's in a competitive way and not a disrespectful way. And obviously that situation was in a very competitive way. And there wasn't, I didn't mean any disrespect by what, going back. I was just like, I felt like I was doing what I was told to do.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And maybe there was a misunderstanding. I don't know, but like, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to be the good soldier here. But I felt like that with our guys, like, and I talked to our guys like, hey man, if you got something that you feel like say it, like express it,
right?
But let's not be disrespectful, and you better be right.
Right.
Like when you do it, you better be right. So but I think all those things, all my experiences as a player has helped me as a coach, because I can relate to some things that maybe these guys are going through or thinking or feeling, and can talk to them at a different level and basically get to the ultimate, to the point that we're trying to get to, which is trying to help them become the best player that they can be.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Mike Lewis. Part 2 of my conversation with Mike Lewis will be out next week. Stay tuned.